Welcome everyone to our 8th episode of Where's Your Focus podcast. And today we are going to be talking about empath. And first of all, what we're going to do is get into the Schumann's resonance. So there's a little bit of strange thing happening there in Italy. I guess on the 15th, what happened was the graph showed a power of 50, and then it canceled out. So it completely disappeared.
Wow.
So it's a little strange. Don't know what was happening there, but anyway, that was on the 15th. And right now, today, they're showing a power of 8, so they're still around the 7.83 hertz. During the week, we saw spikes pretty much everywhere, but everything seems to have gone back down, and it's starting to come back up again. So now in Alberta today, we're seeing, well, I shouldn't say today because this was 2 days ago, remember? Alberta was showing a power of 41, California a power of 52. But what's interesting is they had gone down to like 36 and 38, and now they're coming back up. So there was a big spike somewhere around the beginning of, when I say the beginning of the week, I mean the beginning of since the last podcast, right? So somewhere around Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we saw big spikes, and then it came back down, but it just seems like it's going back up again now. And there was something else that I wanted to say. South Africa still showing nothing, but the other place was it, in Saudi Arabia. Was it Saudi Arabia that was showing the blackouts? It was going up and coming down, and then it was level for a while. Well, that stopped in the last week. There's been no leveling off. Not that we've seen anyway. Okay, so we don't know what next week is going to bring, if it's going to go back into that. But right now, Saudi Arabia, they had spiked actually this week to 131. They went down to 55, which is where they are today. So there's definitely things happening. We're just not quite sure what or why that cancellation happened in Italy. Not quite sure what's happening there. So it's quite interesting. Interesting. Yeah. So what's going on with the moons, Linda? Is there anything going on with the moon right now?
Well, right now we are we're switching today from Aries into Taurus moon. So
Okay.
the last 3 days might have been a little bit of dreamy and dreaming up goals that you may not be able to achieve. So like, those big dreaming, it's almost like a disillusionment. We might be just finishing that up. Now for the next 3 days, we're going to be in Taurus moon. Taurus moon is really all about family. So really closing in that family feeling, preserving what you have, and enjoying that family influence more than normal.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. On Saturday, we change into Gemini. Gemini is at the moon influence in Gemini for the next 3 days. After that is going to be all about communicating, talking about feelings, and getting that stuff out. So that's the moon influence over the next few days.
Okay, and then we're coming into February, where we're going to see those all those 7 planets going into Aquarius, right? So there's going to be a lot of
yeah, and then the full moon is coming up too, right? In February, the beginning of February, we'll see that coming up. It might even be right before February, but still, coming up soon.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay, so go ahead.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so today we are talking about the life of a day of an empath. Now, we decided to talk, there's a wide range of, empaths who are aware that they're empaths and empaths who are not aware that they're empaths. So we're going to try and cover all of that, right? So what to expect in this episode? What is an empath? What is it? How do what is that experience? How do you know if you're an empath? How do you know? How do you know? Using your empathic gifts. So, what are you using your empathic gifts for? And ways to protect your energy when you are an empath. Mm-hmm. Very important.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So we'll start, I guess, with the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Because they're not interchangeable. They're not synonyms of each other. And some people may believe that they are. But sympathy basically is being sympathetic towards somebody else, where empathy is actually feeling for somebody else,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we get into where to what empathy actually is, we can look at or an empath actually is, I should say, we can look at a range, right? So, and there's levels of empathy, which is where we were going to start.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, keep going.
that's okay. Okay. So basically we're looking at anywhere from right in the beginning with narcissistic behavior right up until somebody who has completely um, embraced their gifts of empathy and are superior, I guess. And I don't want to say superior in levels. I mean that they are just able to use their gifts and they're like super empaths at that point.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've
And
really
Linda,
gone through all the knowledge.
exactly. And Linda, when we had our meeting this week, Linda shared an opinion of hers with me regarding how empaths came to be. And I thought it was just so interesting. Linda, maybe you could share that story with everybody now, what your opinion is on that and what your thoughts are.
Okay. Okay. So really, I there's a whole backstory about how I came to this realization within myself, but really our empathic skills have really come to develop and grown in our population in the last 2000 years. You can
Mhm.
see that because of the way that our laws and our society has kind of grown, and we see way more people experiencing empathic experiences, right? Not saying that it wasn't happening before that, but I really do believe that it's something that's really grown in a big way. And I feel as though that was one of the purposes that when Jesus came to earth and he was, doing all of the healing that he was doing, one of the processes that was his purpose in life was to go through the death process and put into place that empathic feeling. So after we die, one of the death processes is we have to feel the pain that we caused anybody in our lives, whether it's little, big, whatever it is. And I feel
Mhm.
like this process has really developed in our soul experience, so that this is something that now we are coming into, and it's becoming a regular thing. More and more people are coming forward
Absolutely.
and saying this is an actual experience. And you can see in the last 2000 years our laws of how we treat each other has completely changed, and
Absolutely.
how we experience life has completely changed.
It really has. It really has. And when you shared that yesterday, your opinion on it, I'm sure some of our listeners will have the same feeling as I did at the time. It was like, wow, that just makes sense, right? Because you think before, I mean, there was just so, not that there's not cruelty in the world now, but it was just on a much larger scale
Yeah, the
back
life was
more.
much more hostile, much more.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Much more hostile. Exactly. Yeah.
And really, the people who were the empaths were the ones that were getting killed and murdered,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly.
anybody, if you had any kind of healing aspects to yourself, if you wanted to help people, you were considered a witch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyways, so
So yeah,
and yeah, the death process, and I feel like that's why he had to go, like he was killed the way he was. It had to be that way. And then he went through that process and then resurrected for that purpose, because he had to go through that process and come back to complete the cycle. That's how I believe it, anyway. Who knows?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Who knows? And if it resonates with you, then great. And if it doesn't, well, then you just leave it, right? For me, it resonated. And I really thought, wow, like this is good. This is really good. And we need to share that. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your opinion and your views on that, Linda. You're so, yeah, oh, I'm just in awe of you. I just think you're so fantastic.
I think you're pretty fantastic yourself.
Well, I think I think we complement each other in a lot of ways. So that's a good thing. So, okay, so let's get back to the empath themselves and how being an empath, I guess if you're, and we had this conversation too when we had our meeting about the broadcast today, about the different levels of being an empath and how, you know, you have to go through so much to get to that end point, right? So that's what we want to talk about today, and how when you are an empath, you can, if you're not sure of protection or how to shield yourself, you kind of become an emotional sponge, right? And that can lead to a lot of different things in your life. A lot of times, if you're an emotional sponge or you're an empath and you don't realize what's happening, you're taking on others feelings of others and not realizing that it's somebody else's feelings and not your own. So a lot of times that can lead to anxiety and depression, and you know, so what you can do in a situation, if you find that you're one who has a lot of anxiety, or you're depressed a lot, you know, when you're having those feelings, go within yourself and ask, are they actually your feelings? And you might be surprised at the answers.
Right.
Yeah,
And then there's practices where you can put up your walls and
absolutely.
those mirrors. And I'm always talking about putting those mirrors so they're facing outwards, connecting to earth, connecting to source, and moving that energy. And then if you are still sitting with anxiety after that, then it is in your own energy field. And it's, just looking into that and getting to the core of it. But as an empath, a lot of public places can seem extremely overwhelming because you don't want to be picking up other people's things. And if you don't know how to do these things, how to protect your energy, then it becomes a battle just to go out and be around people,
Absolutely.
because you're constantly picking up on other people's traumas. And there is different levels of this. I mean, really, if you go from, on the sociopathic side of that is, you still can pick up other people's things, you just don't care. It just doesn't bother you. It's
That's
just,
right.
you turn it off. And I truly believe, like Karen had said in our meeting, everybody is an empath. Everybody has the
Absolutely.
ability to feel the energy of somebody else. When you walk into a room, everybody gets a vibe. That's an empathic experience. And so it is the amount of, are you paying attention to how these vibes are making you feel? Are you allowing it into your system? Are you able to, understand what you're picking up and how it's triggering your energy? And this is all part of that empathic experience. And the more that you're working and trying to understand that journey, the more experienced you're going to become with the energy that you're picking up, so that you have more control over, what you're experiencing.
Absolutely. So we're all born with this ability, but it doesn't mean that we're going to develop it to the point of being an empath. We're born with with the disability. Listen to me, it's not a disability. We're born with the ability, but it's up to us then to foster it, right? And a lot of that comes from learned behavior as to where we were, how we were raised, and a lot of times it comes from the parenting, right? Or grandparents, or whichever the ancestor down the line that raised us, or babysitters, or it can be a learned behavior, right? We've known that through some studies that were done, but it's all about our level of awareness. It's about being aware of what's going on and how you're feeling about it, and how to deal with that.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
that empathic feeling, that makes you a helper. The more you're in touch with it, the more
Yes.
you want to help people, the more you want to be of service because you know how suffering feels to people. And a lot of times that you can identify with their feelings of suffering because you yourself have suffered quite a bit.
Absolutely.
The more suffering that you go through, the more you identify and are able to walk in, not walk in the shoes, but pick up the energy that other people are experiencing. And a lot of times you'll pick up on also what they need to heal. So
Yes.
when you're speaking to them and you're having a dialogue or you have messages, there's messages like you're picking up the whole energy. You're not just picking up one aspect. You're picking up everything. And a lot of times in conversation, you'll have these blah blah blah, blah coming out and you're like, "Wow, where did that come from?"
Where did that come from? Yeah.
It comes from their guides because their guides are trying to speak to them, but their trauma keeps them from being able to hear and understand what's being said. And therefore, you being an empath will get all of that information. And as you share, it just comes pouring out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So by times you may feel like you're on sensory overload, right?
Very much.
Which again can make you want to, oh, okay, I've had enough. I need to get away. If you're not able to properly put up your walls and protect yourself and shield yourself, right? So the key is to be able to feel and be able to accept or acknowledge what's coming in and be able to relay it back, but not to absorb the energy,
Mhm.
not to absorb, be able to feel it, but not to let it absorb into you so that you can let it go.
Mhm. So, some of the ways that you pick up energy, we were talking about this, is sometimes you get it as an emotion or a feeling. You'll have a match in feeling of emotion. You may sometimes get thoughts,
Mhm.
like distinct thoughts. You're like, wow, where the hell did that come from? Or you may physically feel their pain in their body in certain places. And it can happen at any of those levels.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. I think I probably told you about it, Linda, but I'll let the rest of you know. I was working one day in a store for a friend, and a client came in. And when I went up to this client, I instantly got a terrible pain in my back. Now, not really paying attention to what was going on, so not really being aware. I had kind of, was paying more attention to what I had to do at that point in that position. But I had this terrible pain in my back, and I didn't ask. I thought it was my pain just for that split second, or those couple of minutes. And I had to walk away and think, where the hell, where's that coming from? Why do I have such a pain in my back? And by the time I got away, it was gone. So it was like, okay. So I went up to another client and the same thing happened. It wasn't a pain in the back. It was a different situation. But what was kind of neat at that point was the client actually looked at me because I touched the place where I felt pain. And the client actually looked at me and she said, eh? You can feel it. And that's when it hit me. It was like, oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, okay, got it now, got it. So we kind of get messages, and like you say, whether it's physical or emotional or thoughts that come into our heads, it's all part of being an empath.
It really,
So
really.
the awareness of where those thoughts are coming from, are they your thoughts? Are they coming in from somewhere else? Is that pain yours? Is it coming in from somewhere else? And by going in and asking the question, your higher self is going to let you know
Yeah.
where that's coming from, whether it's yours or whether it belongs to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, being aware that there are energy vampires out there too.
Yes.
So we want to be aware that there's certain people you're around, and it doesn't matter. You can have as much energy as, but when you get around this person, it just seems to, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I need to sit, or I need to. And these people are draining your energy. And I'm not saying that that person is aware that they're doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not, something that we intentionally wake up and say, I want to drain other people's energy. It's just that sometimes people can be disconnected from source and earth energy. And when we become disconnected through traumas or things that happen to us, we have to get energy somewhere. And we set ourselves up and we can draw that energy from others when we're not being supplied with our own connection. And a great book to read when we're talking about energy sharing is the Celestine Prophecies. That's a great
Yes,
introduction. It's a great
absolutely.
way to, and it's a great book, like just a good read. But it's a great book to just introduce yourself to how, we're sharing energy with plants and animals and people and how that is working. But it's a great book if you wanted to just, if this is something new to you and you're just hearing it and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I need to know more. The Celestine Prophecies is a great introduction.
You're right. It is. It is. It's absolutely. I think I've read it maybe 3 or 4 times. I started when I think the first time when I was first introduced to it, I was like 25 years old, 24, 25 years old. And even just like maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago, I read it again.
Mhm.
And there's a few different volumes, right? But the first one is by far, I find, the best.
Yeah,
And maybe it's because it was when I was learning, when I was just starting out. So maybe that's why I thought it was the best, but I still think it's the best.
I
Yeah,
like the book one because it was such an eye opener. I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, of course, this is
absolutely.
exactly what's happening. Like,
Absolutely. And for empaths, like Linda had said, there's going to be those energy vampires and a lot of times they come in forms of toxic people, right? Um, so if we feel that we're depleted of our energy, the best place to go and get it back or to go and help us to refill, fill our cup again is through nature. Because the trees are just amazing with energy and they just fill you beyond compare.
that's right. And if you're wanting to practice too your empathic skills, going into nature and working in the
Mhm.
forest, or even with your dog or your cat or your animals at home, they are just so receptive to the energy, and you can be so receptive to theirs as well. I get so connected to my animals, like we talk telepathically. So,
That's amazing. That's
yeah,
awesome. And horses as well. If you have,
horse is
if
amazing.
you have the ability to go and spend time with horses, oh, then they're just amazing.
They truly are. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's see. What have we talked about? My goodness, we've kind of touched on everything, Linda. We can talk further into it, but um, yeah. So maybe let's just talk a little bit about setting clear and healthy boundaries.
Yes. See, and that's one of the things that I talk about a lot, even when I'm doing my readings, is you have to have boundaries. And sometimes, because a lot of the empaths have been raised by a narcissist or have been exposed by narcissism of some sort, and that's how we become so developed in our empathic abilities, because we need to feel the energy of the person to know where we need to go and what we need to do, so not to set it off. Okay,
Right.
so and that is just one of the things to take note of. And a lot of times that's where a lot of core traumas are in empaths. And that's why they pick the energy up of other people so easily.
Right.
Um, what?
And keep in mind, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who raised you.
No,
It could be a boss, it could be a teacher, it could be anybody that, affected your life in some way, shape, or form, right?
absolutely. Somebody that you were forced to have a close interaction with on
Right.
somewhat of a regular basis. You have no other choice. You have to learn how to feel around in it to be able to know where to walk next.
Right. Right. And often we'll say, "Oh, feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time."
Exactly.
That's a sign that
That's
whoever
like
it is
you're
you're
an
around
empath
is
in training.
exactly. Exactly. Yes, exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is because your other senses, all of your senses are so heightened, right? You're going to pick up more. You're going to pick up more about what's going on.
That's right. And another thing that can happen too, because a lot of times when we are so connected to certain people, we can become addicted to that type of energy,
Yes.
right? And we close ourselves off from source energy. And when we close ourselves off from source energy, we are again just addicted to one type of energy. And when that is no longer available to us, it's almost like the spirit is going to go through a depression.
Mhm.
Okay, so and this can happen very often. Like even if you go out in public and you're feeling like you like that feeling, you're connected to a lot of different people and you're picking up and you're giving out. And then when you separate from that, you go through a depression. And that's, I think, why it's so common for empaths to have depressed energy a lot, because they need to train themselves to reconnect to source.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in a case like that, you would find you could find somebody who was possibly constantly living in drama, constantly living in drama, and needing that to feed them, right? Not realizing what was actually happening in their life,
Mhm.
or
Absolutely.
why they were needing that, right?
Mhm. And another habit that we see too is people who live in victimhood. So when things happen to them, it's always happening to them. Why is this happening to me? Why, and that is another source of recognizing when somebody's acting in victimhood. Often, they are oftentimes looking for energy from other people instead of taking responsibility of the fact that it's your energy system, your energy is creating, your internal energy is creating your external world, and looking at what is happening and what do you need to shift inside to realign with source so that you're not attracting this experience anymore. Instead, what you're doing is you're talking to this person and the next person and this, and so you're drawing energy that way. And by doing that, you're recreating this situation over and over and over again in so many different ways so that you have lots of to talk about.
Exactly. And the thing of it is that continuously happens. We continuously relive and relive certain situations until we learn
Yeah,
what they're about, and we realize what we're meant to learn there
that's right.
before we can move on to the next. But it's funny, Linda, because you mentioned the Celestian prophecy just a little while ago, and while you were speaking there, it just brought that all back to my head again, and how they talk about the 4 different types of people, and how there's the, if I can remember now, there's the aloof, there's the poor me, the aloof, the interrogator, and the intimidator.
That's right.
Okay, and those 4 types of different people, they're always until they become whole themselves, they're always looking for somebody to replenish their energy so that the energy can go back and forth. But it's kind of like a struggle. It's like a tug of war, right?
Mhm.
But when you become aware of your own energy and other people's energy, and you can make the difference, there's no longer that struggle anymore. There's no longer that tug and that tug of war that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And it's, I love, and it reminds me too of that book again. How when people are pulling your energy and you can feel it, he talks about pulling source energy and just giving them the energy that they want until they are done. And a lot of
Absolutely.
times they'll just like shift right away, that they won't need that pull anymore,
Absolutely.
because it's the tug of war that they're wanting.
Yeah,
It's
that's it.
that's part of the drama part of it.
Exactly. And it halts the conversation immediately. When you're able to pull in that energy and just let them have it,
Yeah,
you're not being depleted, right?
exactly.
They're not taking your energy. You're not giving your energy freely,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
only when that struggle goes on that you feel like you're being depleted.
that's right.
And that's when you can end up developing some holes in your energy field, in your aura, right?
That's right. So, well, trauma will sometimes, and trauma can be in many different ways, but trauma can create little tiny holes in your energy field. And
Absolutely.
other people coming up can sense this and they'll start drawing the energy through those little tiny holes. And so we can see, like, if we're experiencing a lot of anxiety, depression, sadness, anger, any kind of emotion like this, it's like your energy field is not at its strength. So, and it's funny because I'm working with somebody right now and we're working on a little piece because she came to me and said, Linda, there's something I'm getting this information about the chakra systems and how they're connected to God's armor. And each chakra is connected to a piece of armor from God. And I was like, of course, if you are, each chakra is operating in the light, in alignment with God, then you have that God armor on. That means that there is no holes. There's nothing that can be taken that is yours. It's, it can freely be given because it's a source of God energy, source energy. It's
Exactly.
not yours, does that make any sense when we're in a
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's coming from source. It's coming
it's
from source.
coming from
So whether you want to call it God energy or universe energy or source energy or whatever is, a lot of people have trouble with the word God, right? Because of what religion has done with the word God.
yes,
But
well,
when
suffering
we
in the name of God.
exactly. So if you're more comfortable using universal energy or mother my goodness, Mother Earth's energy or whatever is most comfortable for you, that's what you're drawing on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what actually resets your energy source, right? So the more that, and crystals are great.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's got anybody who has those kind of holes or energy leaks, pyrite is a really good stone for helping with that. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you how I found that out. I was at this same little shop, and I'll just mention it quickly. It's Boutique Mistral in Moncton. Michelin is the owner of that shop, and she's a good friend of mine. So once in a while, I'll go down and help her out. Um, so anyway, I was in there this one day, and this gentleman came in, and he said, he was overlooking at the crystals. So I went over and I asked him if there was something I could help him with. And he said he was looking for, he said that his naturopath had told him that he had holes in his aura and he was looking for crystals to help him with that. So I said, okay, I didn't know any crystals that would help him with that. So I suggested that, I'm not one that lies about what I know or what I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't pretend. I don't want to say lie. I don't pretend. If I don't know something or if I'm not sure about something, I'm not going to say it, right? So I said to him, well, you know what? I'm not quite sure. So why don't you just stand in front of the crystals and see which one kind of speaks to you? Because a lot of times crystals will do that, and they'll draw you. They'll choose you, right? They kind of know the energy of the crystal knows. So I let him kind of look, and he came out with this pyrite stone. So I looked at it, and right on the card of the stone, it said helps with holes in the aura. So
Amazing.
just amazing at how the energy, if you allow it and if you're aware,
Mhm.
how the energy is it's just so amazing, right? To help us in any way that we need help.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Also, if you find that you're in tune with spirits or entities in your area too, that is also empathic capabilities, right? Um, any energy that you're picking up in your surroundings is empathic capabilities, and so that is also another aspect that to consider, that if you're picking that stuff up, you are more empathetic, or more, yeah, you're more empathetic to certain types of energies, and there's probably a reason for that. You're probably somebody that's able to help those entities back to the light. You're probably somebody that's able to help them understand their current situation and what's happened to them, and that they need to start thinking about going back to the light.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and empaths are also really good listeners, right? We
Yeah.
learn, we learn so much more by listening than by speaking,
Mm-hmm.
no matter who we're speaking with, right? We learn so much more by listening, and empaths are such good listeners. And a lot of times that's why we get toxic people who will come to us, because they continuously want to get that energy, right? That kind of that pull and tug. And what happens is they feel so much better after.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that,
So
yes. And it is about, too, the fact that their energy feels heard. We can talk from the mind all we want. And a lot of times the mind will not allow us to feel like we've really been heard and understood and valued for our what we've had to say. But when somebody says they're like when somebody is listening to your energy, and empaths are really good at pulling out what the energy needs to say, not just what the mind needs to say. And the more that we're pulling out what the energy needs to say, the better we feel inside.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
The energy
We do
wants,
have to be,
sorry,
sorry. No, go ahead, finish what you were
energy
saying.
wants to
Sorry.
feel valued, heard, and understood. That's, the more that we feel that we're being valued, heard, and understood in our energy field, the better we feel. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So basically we're always wanting to help. As empaths, you want to help all the time. That's just the nature of being an empath, right? What you have to remember though is that even though even though you want to help somebody, you have to set those boundaries, because a lot of times empaths will keep going and keep going, even if it means harming themselves. They're going to keep going and keep going and keep going, because it's all about service to others, right?
yeah,
But you have to look after yourself
that's right.
first. If you don't look after yourself first, then you're not going to be any good to anybody else.
That's right.
Yeah,
If you have nothing left to give, you're harming not only yourself, but everybody around you too.
absolutely.
And there was something that we talked about in our meeting too that Karen had mentioned that I think is so very important is empaths need time and space to themselves,
Absolutely.
where they are not required to connect to anything or anyone for however long that is, so that you can be in your own space and connect to your own self. And it's something that I feel, empaths, because we're such helper point of view people, that we forget that that needs to happen sometimes, and we want to give, that we don't nurture ourselves.
Mhm, mhm. And a lot of times, if we don't listen to that, we will find that our own personality will start to change.
Oh
And I
yeah.
don't mean change for a long period of time, but I'll give you an example. If I and it just happened not too long ago. I took on a couple of things, and that's why I kind of rolled my eyes and laughed, Linda, when you said that this moon coming up is talking about setting goals, and maybe setting their goals too high and not being able to achieve them. And that's kind of why I rolled my eyes, because I took on a few things over the last little while, and I noticed that I was getting a little how can I say, not nasty, but a little more abrupt when I was answering questions with between me and my husband. If my husband said something, I was a little more abrupt than I would normally be. It happened twice. And then I was like, okay, hang on here. This is not me. I don't answer like that. So what's happening? Right.
Mhm.
And I'm sure he probably would have said something had I done it a third time. But by the second time, it was like, okay, something is wrong here. Something is not right. What am I doing and what is going on? And you kind of take a step back and you realize what's happening. And then you can kind of deflate from it, put your energy back in place, and carry on, right?
Exactly.
So it's all about being aware of what's happening with your energy.
Yes, and knowing your tools too, right?
Yes.
Because for me in particular, like I am so much more aware now when I have to put those walls up and say, okay, I cannot give anymore. I cannot put my thoughts towards healing a person anymore. I have to put my walls up and I have to literally pull the strings back and give the strings back to the person, like the energy strings. I sometimes have to do that because I can't work on myself. Because as soon as I go into that analytical aspect of myself that wants to heal, if I need that for myself, I will, and I have somebody else's energy, I automatically start healing and like working through their crap. Like it just is something that starts to happen, and it took me years to figure what was happening. It's because I have that energy connection going on with that person, and so as soon as I go into that analytical, like healing aspect of myself for myself, that person is like, yeah, yeah, like you figure me out, work my stuff out, and it's like, oh God. And then finally I learned, okay, I'm going to send that to you and I'm going to pull my energy back and I'm going to put my walls back up around me. And nine times out of 10, as soon as I do that, then I'm back to, okay, now I can focus on what needs to be understood for myself. And really having to do that was really transformative inside of myself because I could take the time that I needed to heal what was going on with me. I couldn't do that before
Absolutely.
because I was constantly,
Absolutely.
my energy is constantly being pulled in this way and that way and this way and that way. Especially when I first started doing readings, I found that was really pulling on my energy, like in a heavy way. Especially when I would go to bed, I would think about some of the things that I seen and felt while I was reading, and I would be trying to like, you know, give them healing energy and like try to figure out what's going on. And then finally it was like, okay, this can't go on because it was almost like I had a lineup in my energy of like, okay, now I'm thinking about this person, and then that was done, and then the next person, and uh, that had to stop too.
Yeah, yeah. And Linda, just to go back for just a minute, we're talking about where Linda was talking about putting up the walls and sending back the energy. You know, if you're not sure how to do that, it's very easy to do. You basically just need to visualize. You just need to visualize that you're sending that energy back and you're putting up your walls. I mean, whatever you visualize, you're actually creating, right? When it comes to energy.
Yeah.
So it's a very easy process. It's not difficult to do. It may take a little bit of practice, but once you've done it a few times, it's I mean it's like you say, it's transformable, right? Transformative. So it's
It really,
yeah,
I find for me that my energy connection and their energy connection, I usually assign two different colors. Like mine tends to be gold and their tends to be like a
ah,
blue hue almost. Um,
okay.
so I find that that helps in my visualization so that I know like, okay, I'm pulling mine back and I'm giving back theirs. And then I put that mirror in between us again and put it all the way around. I find that helps.
That's awesome, Linda. That's a really good practice to get into is the color, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That would be a great tool for anybody who's watching, who's not sure of how to make the difference.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
also when anytime, like if I'm in a public place and I feel that my energy is getting pulled, drained, I'm feeling drained, putting those walls up, but I also connect to the earth with my roots, pull that earth energy up and pull that source energy down. And I just let that white light fill me up all around. And then instantly it's like I now have control over what I'm letting in and what I'm not. You know what I mean? Like it just completely
Absolutely.
shifts the feelings that I'm having
Absolutely.
any kind of social experience too.
Absolutely. And again, visualization is key, right?
Well,
So
and
you just
and once you practice it on your own a little bit, it becomes second nature.
absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
it's like all of a sudden you can just feel it like instantly, like you're just feel your walls are in place, you feel it and everything is just moving through you, and then you're back to being okay. I'm calm again. I'm not picking up all this anxiety and confusion and like, sometimes it can be
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Absolutely. And it's like a control mechanism, because what happens is you how can I explain? You can have that thought come in and say, okay, this is enough, and then automatically it's
Yeah.
programmed to happen, right? So once you get used to it and you're doing this on a daily and hourly sometimes basis,
Mhm.
yeah, it just happens. It's just a thought, and it's automatic, you're in control.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
also do something else that's a little bit maybe more advanced, but I also will set up energy systems. So I will have, I think I've talked about this before, but groups of energies that I will call on if I'm trying to figure out how to work through certain problems in life. Or just trying to heal certain things in my life, I'll call on certain energies. So I put my walls up with them inside, so there's nothing else coming in, it's just me and that energy. And we can exchange. Sometimes they're other human friends, and sometimes they are angels or ascended masters or whatever that is. And I
Ancestors. Mhm.
yeah, and I find that is a very powerful way to be able to get some information, and it reduces any confusion. I find when I call angels, and I don't have this, it's like my direct connection is a little bit, I would say, diluted. Whereas when I do it this way, I find that the connection is very concentrated.
Right. Right. And different people use different sources of energy like that. Like Linda uses a lot with the angels. I do a
Mhm.
lot with ancestors. Right.
Yes,
So it's the different,
absolutely.
it's there's so many different energies that we can draw upon.
Yep.
And it's whatever resonates with us. It's whatever you feel more comfortable with. It's whatever helps you the most. That's where you go. That's where you turn, and guaranteed they will be there to help you.
Oh, yes. As soon as you have an intention to connect with an energy, it is there. There's no, it
There's no
doesn't,
waiting.
yeah, there's no waiting. There's nowhere else. I can't, what I want to say, there's nowhere else, but there's like, is the second you intend to connect with an energy, you're connected. That's
Absolutely.
it. The intensity of that connection is really dependent on how much of the energy you're letting in. And are you at a place where you're able to trust yourself to be able to connect and understand what you're getting,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
And that's where we're talking about the levels of empathy. Where is your level of empathy? Like that kind of connection is a little bit more on the advanced side. Whereas, when you're in the middle, you're still trying to navigate around like being around people where you're picking up energy and you get overwhelmed by it. And then you're stuck feeling depressed and anxiety and, all these different emotions and feelings that are very hard to navigate inside of, but
Mhm.
you're doing it. It's just you don't know how to control it. You don't know what to do when it's happening.
Absolutely. So a day in the life of an empath will actually depend on what part of the scale you're on, right? If you're not, what word did you use, Linda? I'm sorry, I'm having a, when you said, when you're, oh my goodness, my words are gone. When you're what I call a super empath, when you've
Okay, well developed. So you,
well developed, thank you.
yeah.
So if you're not as well developed, your day is going to be a little more difficult than somebody who has those gifts already developed, right? Because if you're not well developed, then and you're still in the learning stages, going out in public is going to be more difficult for you. And doing all those things it's going to be a little more difficult for you to not absorb the energy. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to put up your walls. But if you're further developed, then your day is going to be completely different, right? So you need to figure out where you are at this point, and what you need to do to develop everything to where you want to be.
That's right. Yeah.
Make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
you can't be shy to talk about this, and find groups and places where you can talk about your experiences and be fostered in them, understood. You're not going to go up to somebody who's a narcissist and start talking to them about it and expect them to understand and be compassionate towards you. That's not going to happen. And when that happens, then you're going to take on even more, and feel even worse about yourself and be putting yourself down. And that is just counterintuitive. You want to find
Absolutely.
places where it's safe to talk about these things, safe to where you can find other people who are also experiencing this, so you can feel like you're not crazy. You're not crazy. I
Absolutely.
promise you, you're not crazy.
Absolutely. And on that note, Linda, I will be starting this year, probably within the next couple of weeks, is the sistership or the women's circles that I'll be doing
Mhm.
on a weekly basis. So anyone who's interested in that, you can go on my Facebook page and get the information there, and we'll yeah, so those women's circles, that's basically what you're talking about. Is going to be a safe space. It's an online event that'll be about 2 hours long on a regular basis, to where we do have discussions on spirituality and different aspects of what's happening in our lives with energy and anything else, right?
Absolutely. And it's so
Yeah,
important to be able to be around other people that can help you to understand
absolutely.
what's happening to you. And your gifts, your empathic gifts, they can come in so many different packages, so many different ways that maybe we haven't mentioned here. And so, don't discount yourself because we haven't talked about it. Just look for ways to get around to other people that you can talk about this stuff and what's happening to you.
Right. And always ask questions. If you want to ask questions in the comments section, we don't look at the comments section when we're doing the broadcast. We kind of get into the conversation a little bit too much. But what we will be doing is looking at the comments after. So if you have any questions or something you're not sure about and you want to ask, like Linda said, we may not have mentioned it, but we might not have an answer. But if we don't have an answer, we will definitely try to get one for you. Okay,
Absolutely.
so ask, because I believe, is it our
Next week
next
is
session
our
next week?
yep,
Yeah,
yep. Next week is our questions week. So we'll be dedicating a portion of the show to answering questions. So if
right,
anybody
right.
has any questions about anything that we've talked about at all in any episode, please send us some of your questions so that we can address them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on that note, next week we will also be talking about, this is going to be this is going to be so interesting. But next week our focus is going to be death.
That's right. So
So
the process of death and all the stuff that happens through death. I just got done watching that series on Netflix, Surviving Death. It was amazing.
yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but yeah, it is. It's pretty good. It's, there's mediums in there. There's a lot of different things in there, and yeah, it's quite interesting. Quite
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know how many episodes there are. Linda, do you do
There's
you
only
know?
8. I think there's only
Okay.
8. And it might not even be 8. Maybe it's 6, because
Okay.
they talk
Yeah.
about past lives with kids. First, they talk about like the death process and people looking for
Right.
answers for people that died, and um, then they talk about past lives and children. So children who remember their past lives, and they talk a little bit about
Yes.
that. Then they talk about mediumship, and I think they do 2 of those episodes on the mediums.
Right. And that's where I finished. I think I was halfway through the second medium show. So I still have a few episodes to go on that. But that's on Netflix, and it's called Surviving Death, I think,
Surviving
right?
death. Hmm.
Surviving death. Yes. So that's quite interesting. And yeah, so we'll be talking about death next week. And it's not a morbid subject, so
It's
stop thinking
not a
that.
morbid subject. And you know what? The thing is that, and I think the biggest purpose is to just try to take away some of the fear that we have around death,
Absolutely.
right? Everybody's
Absolutely.
very fearful of that experience, and it's not a
Mhm.
experience. But
It's quite interesting. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to do today was I just wanted to give a shout out to a gentleman in Halifax. His name is Ricky. I think it's pronounced Goodall or Goodall. It's Goodall. And Ricky's got quite a few videos out. And the last video that I watched, I don't know if it's the last one he did or not, but the last video I watched was really interesting. And it was his perspective on the symbols and what they mean.
yeah,
So
and he focused a lot on Hebrew symbols too, which
he focused a lot on Hebrew symbols. Yeah.
I mean, I have a fondness for like the Hebrew symbols to begin with, and he really like
He
expanded
dissected them.
my knowledge and really talked a lot about the power of our own personal elements of air, water, fire, and earth. And he really expanded on how they've used that in the religion and in the symbols that they've used for healing and so many different things. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and anybody who has been following any of my work, I'm always talking about the elements in the chakras. And he talks specifically in this particular segment that you sent me about clearing the elements out of your, like clearing your elements, so aligning your elements back with the elements, which that's what alchemism is all about too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I
So
just thought it was great.
yeah, it was really an interesting video. What I'll do is I'll find it again and I'll set the link on the page so that we can have anybody who's interested can actually have a look at it. But yeah, I was blown away by it. I thought, wow, this just makes so much sense. It really resonated with me. Yeah. So
Yeah, I thought he was
awesome.
great, and he did a really great job going through all of the topics and all the symbols and breaking down to the Yeshua, and
Yes.
talking about Jesus too, and what the Jesus
Yep.
name really means and all of that stuff. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So he went right from source right down to human beings,
yeah,
right? And how the symbols, how they, yeah. You need to watch it. You need to
yeah,
watch it. It's
yeah.
just really, really interesting. It's really good. Yeah. So that's Ricky Goodall. He's in Halifax. I don't know if he has a separate page or not, but again, I'll put up his YouTube video on our page, Where's Your Focus podcast. And anybody who's interested can go and have a look.
Absolutely. Okay, so
Yeah,
I think that ties up for today.
I think so. We're pretty good, Linda. We're almost right on time again today.
I know. We're getting good at this.
We're getting a little bit better. Yeah. We think so anyway. We don't know what the audience thinks.
Yes, this is true. Hopefully everybody's on board.
Hopefully everybody's on board. Yep.
That's right.
All right.
Well,
So
thank
thank
you.
you everyone for watching.
That's right. And we will see you next week. If you have any questions, please be sure to post them so we can go over your questions next week. And everybody have a wonderful week. Until next week.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.